Welcome, everybody, to our weekly HDI Local Chapters live stream show. Our show is brought to you by Robert Half, a talent solutions firm and leading provider of technology professionals needed to build, deploy, and operate technology in the cloud and digital world. Now, you can browse available candidates, you can search for jobs, and you can access additional valuable information on hiring and career insights at roberthalf.com/technology. All right, let's get on with the show. First of all, welcome back to our audience. We took last week off, needed a well-needed break, the production team and myself. And as we were talking about in the pre-show, I actually literally was so off grid, I think I had negative bars on my cell phone. So that was crazy. But anyway, welcome back. And today our guest is Rae Ann Bruno. Let me tell you a little bit about Rae Ann first. Rae Ann is the owner and president of Business Solutions Training. She has been helping others develop their skills in leadership and communications, team building, and much, much more for almost 20 years now. Rae Ann, did you realize it was coming up on 20 years?
Right? I think that maybe that's a little fewer. There was a fewer years, so we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, a little bit, right? Well, you're
you're right. Since I've been with Business Solutions Training, but prior to that, I was training.
Right, yeah, I meant with your own business, yeah. And so you're also a well-known speaker within the HDI community, as well as, I believe, a trainer for several of their certification courses. Is that correct?
Yes, most all of them.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So on our show, we try to share things with our audience that, like either getting into technology as a career, whether they're in high school, you're talking about, some of our kids are in college, maybe they want to get into it after they graduate, or just maybe looking for a career change, or just can't figure out what they want to do and they think technology might be a thing for them. And we've talked a lot on this show about different kinds of professions, whether it be like gaming, whether it be service and support, leadership. We've even talked to people about, like, for IT professionals, things on the other side of the table, like sales IT sales as a profession, or even recruiting. I mean, many of us have used recruiters either to find a job or to hire people. And we all know, and at least I know most professions like this, but especially the IT profession we know it's a lifelong learning journey for us. We have to keep up on our skills, whether it's leadership, whether it's technical. Sure. And so we want to look on the other side of that table. We've all been to training. Like, what is it like being a professional trainer? So let's start off a little bit by talking about you and your company and what you do.
Okay, sure. So I do consulting and training in the IT arena for the most part. A lot of process improvement, ITIL, a lot of those things. As you mentioned, the HDI certification courses, big into customer experience and KCS. So train a lot of different things. And honestly, when somebody comes to me and says, can you train this? I try to understand what that is. And if I have that experience, certainly I can build courses for them as well.
Yeah, and I know my local chapter here in Pittsburgh has had you, I love your background there, by the way, has had you in to talk in our chapter about desktop support. There's a lot of things like beyond the technical training and that you mentioned, and that's why it's so important for a lot of us, like communication, soft skills, customer experience, and things like that. So one of the other things I personally love to talk about with my guests, especially someone like you, is like, so your journey into technology, right? So how did you get into technology, and what were you thinking about for training? Like, that's monumental, right? I mean, that's big.
So it was quite by accident, absolutely by accident. I started out in school forever ago, actually in pre-law, and I hated my poli-sci. I'm sorry if anybody loves these, but I was kind of bored in my poli-sci classes. And so I decided I wanted something new. And honestly, this is how it happened. Just remember how old you are when you start college, right? I was talking to my friends. I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do now? And they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, really? I'd like to write for like Hallmark cards or something like that, because I love writing. And she says, maybe you should have my major, interpersonal and public communications. So I went and I talked to a counselor, and I still had no idea that that's what I was going to do. I actually decided to start majoring in marketing. It was still within that school, same major. And that's what I was going to school for. And I was working for a small business school, and his wife owned a Macintosh software training company. Actually, they did both sides, PCs as well. And she was interviewing people. And I think this is something to remember as well. If you want to go into training, keep this in mind. She said, she was interviewing a lot of people and they knew the software inside and out. They were really technical, they understood it, but they had no presentation skills. And I was doing all these presentations for him. This was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact. And he said, hire Rae Ann, just teach her the computer. And so she did. So she hired me for my presentation skills. And it was better than the job I had at that point. And I was like, and then I really liked it. And what was kind of funny is my mother is a retired teacher, and all of her friends thought I was going to go to school to be a teacher. And all of my friends thought I was going to go to school to write, but I kind of did follow in her footsteps, but it was for corporate, America. So I started out as training. I did start working for Westinghouse in Pittsburgh, and I was a trainer / technical writer, then became the training manager, and then went into management for a while and circled back when I went into business for myself to training.
Yeah, I saw that. I checked you out on LinkedIn a little bit there, and I saw that you're like, and you mentioned technical writer. Man, that is a skill that, like, I know my neighbor, that's what she does. And I just look at her, I'm like, I don't know how you do it. That's like, that's just crazy to me. I'm not a big writer. So, I mean, I don't mind writing things, but not like technical writing. So that's awesome. So you mentioned a couple things, and I want to get into that a little bit, like unpack some of that. Like, if somebody were to go to college, or maybe they don't even need to go to college, but what would they, need to think about studying or getting into to skill up to be a trainer?
So I certainly couldn't speak today to like what would you do at school, but I think what people look for, first of all, I think it's always important to have a passion for it. And I know even when I teach the HDI classes, people will come up and say, how do you get a job like this? And
yeah,
I was never trained to train, I mean, I got it through work. And so what I always tell people is just start training, no matter what your role is. Can you mentor somebody? Can you train on something that you do? Can you, and then I think you always have to build up, like maybe you're doing one-on-one training, but then can you start presenting, like maybe at a local chapter meeting or at a conference, and just, position yourself. Definitely want to have public speaking if you're uncomfortable with it. So many companies offer Toastmasters, and it just takes practice till you feel really excited about it. I think I was kind of born with the ham factor. The more people that walk into my session, the more pumped up I am. I get pretty excited by that. So
that's crazy, because I know, like, I remember my first public speaking class in college, and I thought I was going to barf in my shoes. Like, they asked me to talk for 5 whole minutes on something, and I went, "Are you crazy?" Yeah.
Well, I had somebody one time as an intern at when I was at Siemens, and we wanted them to speak at our department meeting, and the girl's face turned white, and she said, "What?" And I said, I just want you guys to give an update on your project. It's just, you want us to speak in front of people? And I'm like, yes. And I said, come on, you just got out of school. She goes, in IT? She said, I never spoke in front of people in my life. So I encourage you, speak in front of people, feel really comfortable. And then I think too that just learn, don't take offense, don't take it personally if somebody's, like, for example, I used to teach on electrical manufacturing software, how to build electrical products. And you mentioned technology. You don't always have to be an expert in what you teach. You have to become an expert, right? You have to understand it to the point and the kinds of questions you're going to get. But like, somebody came up to me afterwards and he said, "You're a really good trainer." He said, "However, something that would have worked better for me." And I thought that was good. It wasn't like this thing you did wrong, but he said, something that would have worked better for me is when you started into the screen, you just said, okay, you put this in this field, this in this field, this in this field. He said, it would help me to say, okay, we're building a panel board. And to do this in a panel board, you start here. And so he was like saying, step back with a broader picture and then get detailed. And actually it was invaluable. So I think every opportunity you get to train, get the feedback, ask people if it's working, ask if the pace is good. And I think it's, for me personally, it's incredibly rewarding when people just light up, or they get excited about something, or it's something that can make their jobs easier. So I think just tune into that.
Yeah. And I know for me, because I shared with you, actually, I talked to you, you mentored me a little bit on public speaking back when you came to our chapter meeting. Oh yeah. Okay. But you still, I watched you while you were doing, I mean, that was like, I think it was 2.5 hour thing you did, and that takes a lot of prep time
Oh,
and
when I was in
material.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and yeah, not mentoring me. I mean, you were, but you just didn't know it. I was checking out everything you were doing and how you were doing it and things. And you're right. So just one of the things that I thought about was because I shared with you earlier today. I wanted to get into. I go to these conferences and I see these people like teaching or presenting, and I'm like, oh, how cool would that be if I only had something to give back? One of the things that I feared and maybe still fear is like, what if somebody in the room knows more than I do about what I'm training? Like, is that something you worry about?
I may have when I first started. Like I know the first intro to Excel class I taught, I got something on my email that said I couldn't answer an advanced question. And I was like, of course not, it's intro. But so I just made sure I learned more than I needed. But I feel that the point is, especially if it's a session at conference or it's coming to a training, you know what you're an expert in, and you need to first write the description that way. And then I think always let that person feel good about what they know, but you want them to walk away with something. Right. And a lot of times when somebody knows something really deeply, they're not necessarily coming to learn it that way. They're coming to hear how others are using it, or they're coming for some little nugget, right? And so I really don't think about it from that perspective, but I do try to tune into people and their questions. And I think you have to be pretty adaptive, so if it's going in a different direction, like I was teaching a class of managers once, and a lot of what they wanted, I said, well, do you mind if I just go away from these slides and just bring a few things up, and can we do this? So know your content really well. I think teach what you're passionate about if you can. Yeah. And like I got away from software training. It's not my passion anymore. I love the process stuff and things like that.
Yeah. And that's cool. One of the things that I learned from folks like you and some of our past guests on the show, like Manley and Kirk and Doug Raybold and things like that, was like, I'm very adaptive, like you said. So I know like a lot of my presentations, I put content in there, but not as much. Like I don't write every little thing on my slides because it could go like, I know like things that you mentioned in like what you do is like leadership and communications and team building. That could go so many different ways during a training session that, if you were stuck to your script, because we talked about this show is not scripted for those of you that are listening. We don't script this show. Rae Ann kind of knew what we were going to talk about, but we didn't really script this. And so I try not to script my presentations. And that makes it a little hard though when you're in a time crunch, to get things across.
I think first of all, I hate too much on slides. I just feel like I can read your slide deck. What do you bring to the table? And then I think stories and examples are always really, really good. And I think that's also why you ask people what they want to get out of class, what their expectations are, what their challenges are. I think that always helps you to shape it. And I think too, that's what makes it fun to train, even if it's the same class, because it's different every time because of who's there and what they want to know.
You said something key earlier too, is like, I know I don't do training like you do. Although my first one is in November. That's going to be interesting at the ACI conference. But I know like I write abstracts, and it absolutely drove me bananas when I would go to a conference and I'd read an abstract and I'd go in and it would not be what I read. Yeah. So I make sure I'm very, very particular about that. And I write them, and I was surprised. I told you, I didn't tell you that part of it, but I told you earlier, that my first presentation with HDI, I couldn't believe how many people showed up, and they didn't, and I was a no name. I mean, I'm not kidding you, Rae Ann. I wasn't in the local chat. I was barely an officer.
But it was the topic.
It must have been because I was a no name. And the other thing I did, you mentioned storytelling. I opened up my presentation for those of you that are watching that went to that. I walked in dressed up as Indiana Jones. Well, really that wasn't my intention, but that's kind of what it looked like, and I told a story that was relating.
Now he owns it.
Yeah, it was a story that was relating to what my topic was going to be, to kind of catch people in, suck them into wanting to be there. So you're absolutely right. So believe it or not, Rae Ann, we're
have out of time.
Like a minute to go.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add on what you just said though.
Yeah, I want you to give you the last word. Like, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm all about feedback, not my numbers, but comments. And a lot of times the feedback is your stories, your examples. When people can relate and people can associate something that's important to them to what you're talking about, they walk away with a lot more. So I think that's just vital. if you haven't done it before, find somebody who did and try to incorporate that.
Yeah, and I like, and I'm so big on the feedback now. Like when I was an attendee, I was like, I don't want to hurt their feelings by saying something. But man, I tell you what, I don't want to hear like, oh, you were so good. No, tell me what I need to work on, what to improve, right?
What worked, or what would you have preferred?
Yeah, like you said, that person said this would have worked better for me. I like that.
Yeah,
So
it was a really nice approach. Yeah,
and
it changed how I trained.
Yeah, and when I do training, like when I'm doing some of the things, I actually use handouts. Like I use cubes, and I use I don't mean like paper handouts. I mean like rope. I handed out rope at that meeting to teach them. It was to go along with the actual thing. So it was kind of neat.
Very nice.
So before we go, do you have any last minute like tips or suggestions for someone looking to get into the training profession field?
Yeah, I guess I should have gone out to Indeed or something and checked out job descriptions, and I could have given better info. But I think, look for opportunities. Sometimes you might have to start at an entry level of something you don't love, but just as you excel as a trainer, it opens so many other doors. Feel comfortable in your topic and be excited about it. If it is your passion, start finding ways to be able to train and then start to use that to build your resume. And I will tell you that even if you train one-on-one, most people will say, have you ever trained a lot of people? So that's why speak at conference, hold a lunch and learn, do anything along those lines to start building your portfolio more or less of what you've done. Find me on LinkedIn. I will happily answer questions and give you tips.
That is awesome. Yeah, I love your suggestions because, some of the people that are listening are like help desk, right? Who does more training with users and does it without having them in front of them a lot of times? So if you can do that one-on-one, work your way up, and you'd be surprised, because you're going into training knowing what you're training, not picking up the phone call and going, oh God, what are they going to hit me with today?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So,
right. If I could add one more thing.
Yeah,
when I started into business for myself, I had been in management for a really long time, and my husband said, why do you want to go back into training? That was like your first job. And I said, honestly, because it's not a job for me. I said, I love it. I said, I never get up saying, I don't want to do this. And I think that's how you've got to feel about it. And if you do feel that way, you're probably going to be a tremendous trainer, just like Tom.
I have to tell you, I was jazzed
when you said you didn't think you had anything to share. You have so much to share.
And it's funny because you're right. And I get so jazzed when I do it. I've done a few of the chapter meetings around around the Ohio, Pennsylvania area. And the first couple I went in, I was like nervous, but people are there. They want to be there. And I tell you, it goes that's the quickest 2, 4, 6 hour thing ever.
That's true. Crazy. And you just have to own just own it. If they love something about it, just own that and use it the next time again.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm having trouble doing the YouTube thing for my thing, because I'd like to be in front of people and just doing it with people, not like camera. So maybe once we get past this COVID thing, I'll finally get back into a little bit. Now, so I know, first of all, thank you for being on our show. I know you're ready to hit the road, so I'm grateful that you took time out, and I can't wait to see you in November. Finally,
I know,
it's been a couple years, so I can't wait. For everybody else, let me flip. I went the wrong way. Thanks everybody for tuning in and being patient with us for a week there off. Remember to check us out on HDILocalchapters.org to find out how to become a member and join this community and find these wonderful people like Rae Ann. They're what makes the organization special and just personally awesome, right? And also, if you like our shows, subscribe to our Twitch channel and our YouTube channel, all that usual stuff you hear from these kind of things, and and link up with people on our network and things like that. And I want to put this challenge out there. I have my email address at the bottom of my screen there. I want to put a challenge out for a future show. We talked about in the pre-show about a SmackDown possibly on being what you do is for Disconnected, but I also want to challenge, I want to get 2 guests or more even on a technology SmackDown on-prem versus cloud-based solution, because today I had a couple of my cloud-based solutions just go, one you and I talked about earlier in the pre-show. I love the tool, but when it doesn't work and I don't have my schedule in front of me, oh my goodness. So I'd like to have a couple people email me to say they'd love to be on the show to talk about on-prem or cloud, whichever side of that battle you want to be on. Let us know. And we'll see you next week. Rae Ann, thank you so much. And
thank you.
We'll see you in a couple months, hopefully, right?
Okay, I hope so.
Have fun.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.